How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Have a Conversation. Today, I'm sitting right over next to Rose. How are you doing today?
I'm going well.
That's good. Thank you so much for once again joining me on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, it seems to be going quite well.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's really interesting because when I've looked back at when I started to how it's been going right now, I'm just like, oh my gosh, and people were just talking about it in life drawing classes. I've had people come up to me saying, oh, I love this content you're doing and all that, so it's been really
nice, getting recognition.
Yeah, no, it's been really awesome. So it's been a really positive influence, which is what I wanted.
Yeah.
Positive impact on the art community to bring out these people and show what we do, as an art community. And I really, as for people who don't know, Rose and I have worked 6 times together now.
Yeah, quite a long time.
Yeah, and
2 years been.
Yeah, nearly 2 years this year, and that probably will not end anytime soon. I think that would be awesome. We're probably going to talk about more ideas sometime very soon, and probably book another shoot. You wait, it will probably happen again. And so today, for this video podcast, we'll be talking about a topic which is, like I was saying to you, Rose, that a lot of people are kind of like, are you sure you want to do this? And it's like, well, I mean, I guess this whole series is about not being afraid to talk about specific topics. But, at the end of the day, people don't have to listen to us because it's our opinion, it's our opinion about how we feel about a particular topic, and we have a right to have these opinions about what, these sort of things. So the topic today is, as you guys have probably already tell from the title, is has art standards gone down? It's such an interesting topic, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and especially going from university to now, going to the art community as, and seeing so many amazing artists, hearing so many interesting stories. It's been very interesting. But so I guess for a starting question, Rose, I'll ask you this. What do you think about, let's start off with this. What do you think about, let's say, contemporary art? So what do you think of artwork that you see in, now, shows now, all that sort of thing, at NGV galleries and all that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on, modern art in the 21st century?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of paintings and stuff where someone just splattered some paint on it and then called it art.
Yes.
And it doesn't really evoke any emotions at all. It doesn't really tell a story. I think now it's not really evoking anything in me when I say art. Fair
enough.
I'm quite sure. Yeah, there's this. I think it's Andy Warhol.
Yes.
There was at the NGV, even just that picture of the tomato can.
Yeah.
I'm
you don't
and it's
really
meant to
get
be
it.
saying something about communalism and capitalism and all this kind of stuff. And I'm well, where is that saying that? But it's just and I'm and there was this and there was another artist, I can't remember his name, it was an African American artist. It's quite famous, and it was a big full on gallery thing at the NGV.
Okay.
And he was friends with Andy Warhol and that kind of group.
Yeah.
And he had quite amazing art, but it was quite abstract, and I didn't
You didn't really connect with it in a way?
I think because it was from a different culture and from a different sort of time.
Okay.
But there was some art pieces where I was oh wow, that's actually really fascinating. That actually shows what it was during that time and what he was going through. And I'm I love when it tells a kind of story. But then there's some stuff now where I'm it doesn't feel there was that effort, because you can do an art piece and you've got the idea in your head and you've got a story in your head, but you've got to kind of communicate that to people who are viewing it. Yeah,
of course.
Or even put a little blurb thing next to it and say, this is what this is. Otherwise people are
just looking at it going, what am I looking at?
Yeah, because it's not movies. Movies you can put hidden clues.
Absolutely.
You can put little symbols and all this kind of stuff. But then with artworks, it's just that one solid thing. It's just one moment.
Yes.
And if you're just splattering paint on a thing, it's oh, well, what am I meant to take away from this?
Yeah, no, I get that. Like, I think it's the same with me, and to be honest, this artwork, I don't know if it's still there at the NGV, but I just remember for years this artwork of all it was this canvas, and it just had these paint, no disrespect to this artist, I didn't get this either, but like, it was just painted squares that looked like a kindergarten kid did it, and I just looked at it.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, is that still there? Because I'm just like...
I don't know, but like, I swear I've seen that.
Yeah, like, and I just kind of look at it,
memory.
and I'm just like, what is going on? And like, I feel like the one story that I can always take away, and you know, for me, I was always, as you know, I'm a very classical person. Like, I love classical art, you know, from 15th century to maybe between 1950s, like from up to there. I love that sort of work. But the one show that I went to was at this gallery near the NGV, and I remember walking in, and it was a very sculptural based art show, and I remember just walking in, and I was there for like 10 minutes, which is like the shortest time I've ever been in an art gallery, and I'm just kind of like, what was I looking at? Like, there was one artwork where it was just a bed frame, and there was no mattress, and there was a tree branch on it, and that was it. And that was pretty much it, the artwork, and I'm just kind of looking at it going, what? And I'm just kind of like, that sort of thing. And then there was like, I found it funny because as a photographer, when I looked at this, I'm like, oh my gosh, poor camera. Someone had smashed a pole through a camera, straight through it.
Okay.
And I'm just like, my first response was, oh, poor camera. But maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're just trying to get a response out of you, like that sort of response. Yeah. But for me, I'm kind of like, it just is really hard because, you know, I just think about, you know, I remember watching this video, which I'll link the video in this video description, where this guy talks about the quality and the standards has gone down to more like people trying to either offend you or disgust you. And because, you know, there's been so many weird artworks out there where people have created artworks out of like feces, out of piss, you know, it's like that sort of thing. I'm just like, I don't get that myself, because I'm just like, I don't know, like I don't personally get that. And like, I remember I went to an art university where, no kidding you, this person had literally put on a cloth and had put semen on it. Like, yeah, and I'm just like, that sort of thing, I just kind of was like...
That's like a 7-year-old or like a 14-year-old going into puberty's like little artwork thing.
But yeah, no, it's kind of like, it's just getting to... For me, like, I just think... But I think one of the worst things that I saw was, at my university, they would talk about... they would call my ideas very outdated. Like, the way that I would create art, like similar to what you see me do, and, you know, similar to the way that we've created art together. Yeah. They call it very outdated. Which, you know, I don't really understand that, but they kind of like said, oh, you know, these are old ideas, they're very, you know, not now. And I'm just like, okay, and what's, you know, wrong with that? But anyway, but then they would call, like, as I said, this artwork where it was like a cloth with semen on it and all that, like, amazing and genius works, and you're just kind of like, what? You know, you're just kind of like, what? I don't really get it. Like, and then the worst one actually, and oh gosh, the only time I was in a gallery where I nearly wanted to throw up was this person who decided to make an artwork of her spitting into another guy's mouth and literally phlegm going in each other's mouth. It was like, it was a video work, and that's all it was. And I'm just kind of like, I kind of understand what they're trying to go for, but then I'm like, really? I'm just like, this is the standards that we're going to? Like, just spitting in each other's mouths and trying to disgust everyone and trying to make people
feel... It doesn't really belong in a gallery, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it belongs somewhere else.
Somewhere.
It is the wrong setting.
The wrong setting, but it's just like, I don't know, I don't personally get it myself, and maybe
there's some people out there who will look at it and go, wow.
Masterpiece, genius. Like,
because then you have to really look for the clues. It's like... what a like outlook on health and hand hygiene and spit and stuff, and
or maybe
all the exchange between two people
when they're kissing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I really don't get that.
No, I don't either.
I'm like,
No.
Even like now with like COVID and stuff, like that would.
Oh gosh, that people would not do that if there was COVID here. Like they would be like, oh, I had this idea, can we do this? And it's like, nope, COVID. It's like, no, I'm not doing that, thank you. But no, it's kind of just funny how times have just changed and adapted over time. And like I was like, and you know, it was when you like, I even was talking to another mate, and he said that he actually went to the exhibition of the university that I went to, and he even said himself, going, I was so strongly disappointed with the standard. It was it was just, I don't know, there was just not really much quality of work, you know. It just seemed like people were just creating anything, and then they would just interpret it as anything. And like, maybe I think it's, at the end of the day, like, I definitely think it's kind of like, as they say, art is subjective, you know, art is this, but you know, it's like, I think, I don't know, like, I just, you know, when you really think about like, you know, the quality of standards, where you look back maybe 500 years ago, where people, would they be doing that sort of thing, or, you know, doing during that time? And maybe, I don't know, maybe as the times change, maybe that's what's happening, like this is what's acceptable. But then it's just sad, because like the one thing that I didn't understand is when I was at this university, they were kind of teaching these art movements like the Renaissance era and all that, but they were kind of teaching in a way by putting it down, like saying that they did this wrong, they did this and all that sort of thing. And it's like, well, you know, the times were different, definitely, but then it's also like, you know, respect what people have done before. But you know, I don't know, it's like, it was really interesting. Like, I'm glad that I didn't go back to that university, because I feel like I just didn't learn anything from that. I just learned, quality's down. But you know, it's just, it is a really interesting, like, because you can, I think, definitely it's very subjective, but then you kind of go like, well, what is the line of what is seen as good quality art? I think that's the one thing as well, is like trying to find the line of what is classified as, what should be classified as art. But then it's so hard because it's so subjective. But you know, it's, I don't know, do you think that, in your opinion, do you think there should be kind of like a line where it kind of goes, all right, this is, you know, quality of art, but then once it's gone over, you're kind of like, I'm not sure about that, you know what I mean? I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like a lot of art students now are being like taught in a way that you have to be so abstract to the point where you don't even make sense.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, it's like, it's almost like with the line thing, like they're teaching them to go over that kind of line and stray away from anything, which sounds bad. And but it's just strange. I mean, it makes me think, it's a weird comparison, but it just makes me think of memes.
Oh, no,
like,
I get that.
The memes that we've got now, they are so abstract, and you have to like really understand like the culture of like memes and stuff to like get what they're pointing at. But like, they really have gone down to like quality and like meaning, and it kind of feels like art. I mean, memes are a form of art if we really think about it. But maybe like, do you feel like art students are being like taught to like go really just strange and abstract, and really like go, oh, let's be offensive, let's be crude, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I honestly think sometimes they are trying to do that. Like, I still, oh my gosh, actually, I just remembered this one artwork where, and it actually goes with that thing, because, you know, I think honestly sometimes they're trying to get them to do that. And I remember this one student literally, it's just, it's just really, like, you understand why I'm finding it really hard to talk about it, because it's just such a, there was that whole thing, it was like, maybe 7 years ago, when there was those live beheadings in the countries, I can't remember which, in the Middle East countries, where they were, and they were, you know, kidnapping news people, and then they beheaded them.
Groups,
She did a whole artwork where she showed that to everyone, and I couldn't watch it myself, because I'm just
traumatic.
like, I don't want to watch that. Like, I don't really, and you know what I mean? And so I think, I feel like sometimes people are trying to encourage going, maybe doing something like that, doing something in your face, and I'm just like, no, like, I'm sorry, I don't want to, like, that's awful. Especially, I feel bad for that person's family, like creating artwork based on someone else's pain. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of like, I thought for me, I was just kind of just sitting there like, no, I don't like that. You know, it's like you can't, like, using such a very intense and, as you said, traumatic video that went viral and that blew up all around the world, and you don't really think about, like, first of all, the family who literally lost their son, lost their father, you know, their husband, you know, all that sort of thing, or even like, and you're putting it out there for, you know, I guess entertainment, like for people to look at. And, you know, I was just kind of like,
yeah, that's gross, especially like, because that's the kind of recognition that these people who've like strayed away from like, Islam and like all these other religions and values and that kind of stuff, and they've completely gone away from what that actually is, that Islam and stuff, and like that's the recognition that they wanted. That's the way they wanted to promote that. And I feel like that really feeds into like that, what's the word for it? Islamophobia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people get freaked out. Like, people were so terrified and, you know.
Yeah, because then you get the image of like all these people are like horrible people going to behead you if you ever go there. When they're actually quite lovely people.
Oh, they are. Like, I've met so many lovely people like that, and that are just, you know, and even they're just kind of like, no, that's not what we're about, you know, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, because there's a difference. There is a very strong difference between these two people.
Absolutely. And it's like, you know, the other artwork that really sticks out to me was, I don't know if you've heard this name, but it was Piss Christ. I don't know if you've
I really don't want to know.
it's pretty straightforward, and all this artist has done was he put a cross into piss. And, you know, and for me, like, I know that, like, obviously there's such big history with the Catholic Church and all that sort of thing, you know, obviously with all those things. But then it's like,
taking a piss on Christ. But
and it's like that sort of thing. But, like, it kind of goes to that same thing, kind of going like, well, yeah, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you know, they've had their bad history, but in a way, not all Catholic people are like that. You know, the same way, like, not all Islamic people are like this. Because, and it's like, but it just seems like I think it just seems like people are just trying to find the next offensive thing to do, you know. And I think for me, as an artist and a photographer myself, I do not want to offend anyone with what I do, because I would hate that. Like, I even, you know, if I accidentally say something and someone goes like, or, you know, that, I don't think that was really nice what you said, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it like that, you know what I mean? So I don't even want to, you know what I mean? So I just think to myself, would I do that in art? And it's like, no. You know, I would never want to offend anyone, and I just feel like people are just, you know, they're just trying to, just, I don't know, it's just, it seems like the standard is just now, let's see how we can offend the next person, and it's like, that's how we can do this, you know? And I don't know, it's interesting.
It makes me think, because like, now, like, especially online, we're very, like, strict and, like, very easy to call out people, and, like, very strong cancel culture, and I think art is kind of like that gateway to get away with that very offensive, very extreme sort of take a piss on these groups, take a piss on that kind of person. Because you can't really do that online now. Because like I remember online, there's a person that I follow, and they do not quite understandable art, and they had like crutches, and they were up on like these massive heels, and they were like and they were like using wheelchairs and like just stuff that people with disabilities would use as like art, and I thought it was interesting. I was like, okay, you're kind of using that to hold yourself up, kind of using a wheelchair as a beauty art thing. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I can and I can kind of see the offensive part of it. It's like, it's like, let's glamorize something that people with disabilities would need to use, and here's this able-bodied person using it. But like all the comments on it and stuff, and it was like all these posts about it saying, oh, this person's cancelled, this is so horrible, this is so ableist, all this kind of stuff. And then if you were going to do that at a gallery,
people
then
would be, you know,
they're like, oh wow, abstract.
Amazing,
and you would get away with it. Because you wouldn't be able to do it online.
Yeah, no, I didn't really think about that, and yeah, you're actually right. Like, it's kind of opened now a gateway for people to do whatever they want and get away with whatever they want, and you know, and I think like, yeah, I don't know, like that. I didn't actually think of it like that, but that's really interesting because I think you're definitely right that sometimes people think, oh well, it's art, you know, it's subjective, it's this, like I can do whatever I want, you know, I can do all of this. And then, you know, like, as you said, there's been all this cancel culture with people, like, you know, there's been YouTubers, there's been comedians and all that sort of thing that get cancelled for just saying stuff but not meaning it. But then in art, people aren't getting, you know, it's really...
It's face to face.
Yeah.
Online, you could do, like, a tiny little mistake and it's like, cancel. This person is horrible, they're so horrible to this group and this and this. But like, if you're at an art gallery, you're gonna go up to the artist and say this is offensive. Like, it's because like the internet just provides such a little safe place for people who take everything offensive.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
And it's just, and it's, you know, I don't know, it's really hard. Like, it's kind of like, you know, I think that's why probably a lot of people were kind of like, when I had this idea for this video, they were kind of like, oh, be careful and all that sort of thing. And it's like, well, but
it makes sense.
Yeah, like, it's kind of like, what are we gonna just now be afraid just to talk about anything? Like, you know,
I hate that. I hate not expressing my opinions, and I love when people have different opinions from me, because then you can actually like talk about it and get their point of view.
That's it.
Yeah, and now it's like you express opinion, and it's like, I don't agree with your opinion at all.
You should be shunned for it. And
it's like no, open up, like communicate.
Yeah. And I think that's like, you know, and I love that there are people out there that are like, gosh, I'm having a mind blank, but there was this one YouTuber who kind of goes out in public and comes up and says like, has he has this comment, and then he has people coming up to him abusing him and saying, well, you know, what, like, but it's like kind of a comment of like society and how like, what is this okay and is this not okay, and then he'll just get all the abuse taken out of him. But then some people will be like, actually no, you do have a very good point there, you know, like, and so it's like, it's really interesting because it's kind of like that whole thing of where if you are to have an opinion that doesn't suit our, I guess, the agenda of our society, then you don't belong. And I think that's ridiculous because, like, I think even for me, this series, like the creators process, let's have a conversation, is all about, and you know, the one thing that a photographer said to me, what do you love, is that I've given the people who I interview the chance to share how they feel, share their story, and just talk about what is important to them. Yeah. And I think, yeah, it is important because, you know, we all have our own voice, but, you know, obviously there are people there's extreme people that say the most ridiculous things, like, you know, they're, you know, all like they're racist or, you know, homophobic.
Yeah, they're harmful to people.
Harmful, yes. But, you know, the people who are just saying like, oh, I'm not sure if I really agree with that, and you're just like, don't, you know, shunned.
Yeah, it's such
a
big hive mind thing. It's like everyone has to think the same way, everyone has to be this way, and it's like, no. It should be different.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm pretty sure I said this in one interview I did where we were talking about, well, it's a very different thing, but it's kind of like, you know, the human form saying like, you know, we're all built different, you know, we're all look different and all that, and it's like, if we were made to think or to look the same, we may as well be androids, we may as well be robots, because, you know, that means we're all pretty much the same, you know, and it's just like, I don't know, I think it's just, it's interesting, but it's like on the standards with art and all that sort of thing, it's kind of like, I don't know, but it's really, I love that you did that comparison from like kind of people hiding behind screens to when it's in public. It's like, it's just, it's really interesting because, you know, unfortunately, you know, you have those people who are behind screens and kind of just say whatever and feel like they can do whatever they want, and it's like, I don't know, it's interesting, but it's like, but I definitely think I think you said after before the question of like, do they try and teach it at university?
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like, you know, when I think back on my years, because I was there for 3 years at this university, I think to myself, I'm like, well, it's interesting because when I actually think about it, when I think about the history that they've taught about art, sometimes I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know, it feels like they kind of want to try and push that, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and and creating work that sometimes does not make sense. Like there were artists in my group that would literally do sculpture artworks, but not your standard ones that you would usually see. It would be like pieces of bed frame everywhere, as I said, and all that, and you just like, I remember walking through these rooms kind of going, looking at the bed frame and just all these different parts, and I'm like, and then when they tried to explain it, I just didn't get it. I didn't get that read. It just didn't make sense, even with an explanation, it just was kind of like, it just looks like a broken bed frame that literally is scattered everywhere, and that's literally all you did,
Yeah, you see that on the side of the street when we've got...
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, is that art now?
Yeah, it's pretty much. So I'm just going to start walking on the street, go through the graffiti alleys, and I'm like, oh, there's a broken chair. That's art. It's like, but no, I don't know. It's just, so do you think, like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on, like, do you think people are trying to, like, what are your thoughts on, like, with what you asked me as well? What do you think?
I think, like, on the other side of the, like, sort of spectrum of it, it's like, I think maybe they're more teaching them to, like, really express, like, something, like, weird and deep, and, like, be quite vulnerable with things, and just be weird and put weird stuff out there.
Yeah.
And not really care what anyone else thinks. But then again, like, if you're putting something out there, you want people to look at it, maybe. Like, I don't want to be that kind of person where it's like a catcalling situation, like you're wearing a nice outfit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, like,
that's a different situation. That's completely different.
Yeah, like, if you're putting artwork out there, like, in a gallery and stuff, like, people are going to look at it.
Yeah, and people are going to comment.
And I'm like, maybe people don't really want to, like, tell a story anymore or evoke emotions. They just want to put out the thing that they've put in their head, and they're like, maybe it's like a narcissistic thing. They're just like, oh, I just want to do this for myself. This doesn't make sense. You can look through it, interpret it your own kind of way. But then it's gotten to a point where I can't interpret it, like, in my own way. It's not like dance or music or movies. I can't just be like, oh wow, I can interpret that my way, and the artist's got a different view on it. But I've gotten my own story from it.
Yeah, and I think it's also just like I definitely understand where you're coming from, because it's kind of like, the other thing that I've realized is, like, with the people, as you said, when you put artwork out there in a gallery, people are going to comment. People are going to look at it. Yeah. People are going to say, oh yeah, that's really cool. And some people might say, I don't like it, and that's okay. Yeah. But I think there are just some cases as well where, when you have those artworks where it's kind of like, oh, people don't like it, and then they just come up with excuses, like when the artist kind of gets those comments of saying, like, if someone says, oh, I'm not really a big fan of your artwork, and they just kind of put it back on the viewer saying, oh, you just don't get it, you just like, and it's like, but aren't I allowed to have, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, sometimes people just, in a funny way, they don't want to be criticized for the artwork that they do, and it's kind of like, oh, you're putting it out there, so, like, you need to take, constructive criticism, any criticism. I've gotten so much bad, like, criticism for my own photography.
Yeah, it's a part of, like, the artist's sort of
exactly.
pathway. I'm quite sure that's obviously being taught.
Like, I think I was talking to someone else about this, and I was saying, like, that if it's constructive criticism going, oh, I don't like it because of this, or, people explain why, then, I think that's okay. Like, I think, if people say how you can work on something, you can create something, I think it's different, but then also you're just going to get people who just don't like it. Like, I've had so many people comment some interesting things on my work, and I've just been like, okay, that's all right, You don't have to like it. If you don't like it, just don't follow me, There are people that do enjoy it, You just take the good for the worst, but then sometimes I feel like there are some artists out there who don't like that. Like, they don't like people kind of saying, oh, that's, I don't like this, and then they kind of question that person going, why don't you get it, or, and they take it as a personal attack, even though it's such a big, back and forth, because, in a way, obviously art's going to be very personal, so it is going to be personal to you, but then at the end of the day, you can't really, take personal criticism, or, well, not criticism for your art personal, because, obviously not everyone's going to like it.
Yeah, because everyone's sort of opinions and projections onto you are like their own perspective, like of themselves. Like everyone is living in their own little world, and then they're expressing that onto you, and you have to kind of take a step back and say, oh, okay, this is this person's point of view.
Exactly.
This is fine, and I understand why that person is reacting like that or thinking like that, but it doesn't provide like a strong reflection like of yourself. And I think that's a good thing that artists should know.
Like just to learn how to sometimes take the criticism and all that, but then it's like but then also kind of go like it's not the end of the world if someone doesn't like it, but it's like, but I think just going back to what we were talking about, just when it comes to standards, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, it's interesting, like just the way that I kind of, like some just artworks just kind of, as we said, like it just seems like they're just trying to get that sort of reaction from you, and which sometimes it does make sense, but sometimes you kind of like, like I said, for example, that person who had the beheading video in their artworks, like that sort of thing. Bring
up someone's flashback, trying to like induce like anxiety in them.
Yeah, and
like
also,
that's just extremely harmful.
Yeah, and for people who, like, and I'm pretty sure, like in that, when they showed that artwork, 5 or 6 people walked out because they couldn't look at it, and actually one of them was me, because well, I don't want to look at that, you know what I mean? I know that it's that person's artwork, but I'm just like, I don't really, like, I just can't look at that sort of thing because it was such a horrific thing, and it's like,
I think people get off on that kind of thing, not like in a get off thing, but more like
they like that reaction,
ego, like sort of like that kind of feeling you get when you're like on top of like a high cliff or something. You get the urge to jump. It's like the adrenaline like sort of rush to get that, because there's this website called Best Gore, and it's just all this extreme gore. Like there was a beheading over in France by a terrorist group, and they uploaded that photo like maybe an hour after it actually happened, and all people were like, oh wow, this is so cool, like this is amazing, I love it, I can't stop looking at it. And like I looked at it once and I'm like, no, this is disgusting,
horrific.
Like even with like serial killers and stuff, like the pictures that people put up online and the stories, I'm like, sometimes I have to like pause my podcast or something because I'm like, I'm gonna like start crying because this is horrible, and the people have died horrible ways, and it's like, why would you want to put that into art?
Yeah, no, you
don't.
I'm
like, it's not art, it's literally murder and trauma and just horrible things that have happened.
Yeah.
And you're not bringing a very good sense of like awareness to it.
No, you're
not helping like the victims, the families, I don't feel. Maybe some artists had that kind of thinking when they were doing stuff like that. Maybe they're thinking, oh, maybe I could, raise awareness of what happened.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of come across as really wrong.
Oh, it has. Yeah, and you're just kind of like, well, what, it's just, I just don't understand that. And I think the worst is that some people actually, when they were looking at the artwork, people really liked what they were trying to do, and I'm just kind of like, I think for me, I didn't, like, I couldn't say anything because I was just shocked. Yeah. I had the shock factor, and maybe that's what they were trying to do, but I don't know. But for me, I just didn't know what to say, because I was just kind of sitting there going, I can't believe they, when you're processing something where you kind of like, that actually just happened. You know what I mean? That actually was, like that actually was shown right in front of me, and I'm just kind of like, I think I was in shock for that whole session. And then when we left to go and look at someone else's artwork, I think that still lingered in my head for ages, just going, what? Like, I don't get it. Like, I really don't. And it's, like, I definitely think you're right, where it's kind of like, it just feels like they're not helping the people in the shots. They're kind of just, I don't know, because, sometimes art for me is like a celebration of like, people who have created some beautiful work and all that sort of thing. And it's like, with that, it's not really celebrating anything. It's like, it's, I don't know. Do you understand
And
what
I
I
think
mean?
with death, because there's such a weird relationship, like in the Western world, with death and funerals and people passing, that kind of stuff. Like, I think there's a way of showing death and expressing that relationships that we have, but not in a violent, cruel way, and like painting the Eastern world as this violent, vile place when it's not. Like, they just have a different sort of relationship. Like some, I think it's maybe Vikings, Nordic, that kind of thing. Like they would put the bodies like out on the river and then burn them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's like if you took like photos of that, or like, you know, got permission from the group to like, you know, capture that, I'm like, okay, that would be beautiful. That would be telling a story of someone passing.
Yeah.
And you could get the perspectives of the people.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but just like showing beheadings, and like even with like the serial killer stuff, it's like people doing montages and showing like little clips of the serial killers and like promoting them, and like, oh, so cute, when they're like horrible murders and all like. No, you can't really do that.
No.
There's a way of like showing death, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there were so many like artworks even back in like the 1600s that did like talk about those like death and all that sort of thing, but they did it in a way where it spoke to people, and you know, that it illustrated what was happening and all that.
Yeah, that's what I kind of love about art. Like it evokes something in you, and that's why I would be looking at art. Yeah,
no, that's it. And I think that there's a lot of amazing, like, I think to go a bit into, you know, like artists that we have in our art community, there's just so many amazing artists out there that just create such beautiful stories and such amazing art. And I think that's the other thing where I kind of want to do this series, to put them out there, because there's a lot of great artists out there who should be seen. And you know, I remember I had this conversation with a friend who creates these beautiful portraits, but she has trouble selling them.
Okay.
But then on this same site, she would see artworks being sold, like, you know, little splatters of paint that literally looks like in a kindergarten, and people would be selling them for like $400, $500, and that really dampened her. Because she's kind of like, how does that work? You know, like I've seen, like, she takes like weeks doing portraits, and you know, like I know other artists who take ages, months creating these amazing portraits, and some of them have not been able to sell a work because of just something so small. And you know, like I had one artist who told me saying she could not sell an artwork because the person wasn't happy that there was a brush stroke in the portrait. And I'm like, have you seen like old school artworks? The brush strokes help bring out the artwork. You know, the way that someone's painted the strokes is, you know, it brings out a story in the artwork. You know, the way that people have, you know, in the portraits of the face and all that, you can see how the artist has created it. Yeah. And it's like the fact that you're confused why that is there. It's like, what?
Yeah, like what is your understanding of art? Like, have you ever painted before? Like, why are you judging?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like but I think it's unfortunately those same people are the same ones that will go like to a gallery and see like these other artworks, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, you know, it's like, but then it's interesting. I think at the end of the day, I definitely think, as I'll ask you this as a closing question, but like I think at the end of the day, it is definitely a subjective thing. I think for the way that you and I see this, it's like not everyone's going to agree with us, which that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I said at the start of this video, people don't have to agree with what we say, but that's okay, you know? Like it's the way that we see it, and you know, the way that, you know, we have a right to kind of go, hang on, you know, is this actually what art is? Or, you know, and it's like, is this the standard that we see as art? And I think it's just a very subjective thing. I think for me, as a closing statement, kind of like, I feel like I'm giving a speech, but like, as a closing statement, but you know, but no, I think as a closing thought, I definitely think, yes, it is a very subjective thing, but for me, I'm like, I definitely think there has been a little bit of that standard that has kind of left, where it's like that quality has kind of gone, and that subject matter has changed over time, and is kind of, as I said,
the thinking and the effort that goes into artwork has like
just kind of gone,
dampened a bit.
And I think that's also why, and in a way, I think that's why sometimes people think that as artists, what we do is very easy. You know, some people will look at it going, "Oh, what you do is easy," and it's like, how do you figure it? And then maybe it's because of that people see those artworks and they kind of go, "What, you just do that?" And it's like, well, that to me that's not really art myself, but you know what I mean. But then it's like you look at what other people do, and you see, there's a lot more effort into it. There's a lot more hard, studying. There's a lot more creating, process of creating there's a lot more. But I don't know, like I'll ask you this as a final question. What is, I guess, your thoughts on standard of art? So what do you think, as a closing, what do you think the standard is like from now, if that makes sense?
I think it's more open to anyone now, and I like that. But then it's just open to like really stupid. Stupid. I don't know. I can't think of the word. It's
unusual
just like,
ideas, kind of.
Yeah, like spitting on someone's mouth, or like there's this woman, like John Lennon's wife.
Oh yes.
And she just like, she's at this microphone. She just screams, and she's in the gallery, and she's just screaming, and I'm like, okay, all right, great. And it's just very, like, simple things, like you were saying, like the simplicity. Yeah. There's no, like, effort into it, and I think has dampened down. And then, like you were saying with your friend, like, she's, like, struggling to sell these portraits, but then people out there just doing simple stuff, and it's, like, it kind of dimmens like the light on like really good artists, and then these people who are able to sell for like thousands of dollars for doing simple stuff, and then like what about all the other artists? It's like just excluding them, and then it's kind of you kind of have to fit into this little category then, and that sucks because like the standard is like quite low now.
It's like they've kind of gone from complex ideas to simplicity, doing the most basic and simple stuff, and it's like I definitely think and unfortunately that's, I think as well, like as I was saying before, that's sometimes why I feel like some people think that what we do is very easy, because you have those artworks out there that people look at and kind of go, oh, I could do that, and it's like, well, you're not wrong there, because it's kind of like, well, it was very straightforward stuff, but with other people who create and take times to make these beautiful art pieces, that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. You can't just sit down one day and kind of go, all right, I'm going to create this in one day. It's like, no, like it takes a lot more time to create art, and it's like, but I definitely, I think that's good, very good point. And but well, thank you so much for once again joining me on my channel and having this conversation. And I thought it was really good. You had some really good views about this sort of topic, and it seems like we're on the same.
I found the topic quite interesting. Like when you first brought it up to me, I was like, oh wow, I have so many opinions on this.
I know, it's like so many different opinions, and I'm kind of glad that hopefully we've kind of opened, kind of, as I say, this kettle of fish to, for people to talk about this more. Like, for me, I would even love to hear people watching comment and see and ask for their opinions of what they think about standard and all that. Because I think, opening these topics of conversation helps talk about it more, That's how we are able to connect. We talk about it more, we we share how we feel about it. And we should keep doing that. But so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who watched this episode. So please give it a like, comment, as I said, if you'd like to see any more topics and all that sort of thing. If you haven't seen the video I did with Rose, where I interviewed her for the creator's process, I will leave a link to that down below. And thank you so much for watching.